Okay, so I'd like to just give you a kind of report on our meeting with the governor and speaker. We then came back and had a caucus, so couldn't tell you exactly where we were until we had a reaction from the caucus, which was very positive. So just to refresh your memory, what we've done so far in the last year was to kind of reform the way we're doing our budgeting. And so going forward to next year, we're going to fundamentally change that by holding government more accountable. We are definitely looking for the long term. We're not doing a short-term fix. The bills that we're talking about here with the governor and the speaker would involve the next 3 fiscal years, actually. We're limiting future government growth. We're adopting a moratorium on new programs, and we're going to only anticipate about a 1% growth per year in spending, which is less, of course, than inflation we expect. We're going to pay our bills on time. We'll pay all of our backlog bills in the first months of 2011, and we're going to stay current going forward. As you know, we have already cut government in the last couple of years. We have reduced our pension costs dramatically. Probably the only state that's done that. We're going to save over $250 billion in pension costs going forward. We just passed a comprehensive Medicaid program, saving $200 million this fiscal year, and that'll grow in the billions in the next few years. So here's what all this means for taxpayers. A permanent increase in the income tax rate of 3/8 of a percentage point would be used to fund education and provide property tax relief in the form of direct rebates to taxpayers. That's something which we have agreed to, and that will be an increase in property tax relief. It'll be in the form of direct rebates. It'll start about a year from now. We will have a short-term increase in the income tax rate of just under 2%. That will be to pay our bills on time. So going forward, there's going to be a borrowing to pay our bills on time, and we'll have money to pay off those loans. But going forward, no more borrowing of pension obligations. Those will be paid out of the money we raise from the tax. This will be a 4-year program. After that, the property tax relief will continue to go forward, and we will continue to have the tax going forward until we pay off the money we borrowed to pay our bills on time. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What's the total increase in numbers?
What would happen is you'd have an income tax increase for individuals that would be in 3 components would be increased. 1/4% would go to a permanent increase for property tax relief. 0.5% would be used so we can borrow and pay our bills off and then pay that back over about a 14-year period. And then a 1.5% increase would be to address this structural deficit. And this 1.5% increase, in fact, all of these taxes, we should bring in from the individual about $6.2 billion. The corporate increase, there would be a corporate increase as well, which would bring in over $1 billion.
What's that going to be?
And, pardon me?
What's the corporate?
It would go to the same ratio that's allowed by the Constitution. So it's an 8-to-5 ratio.
But is it 4.8 to what then?
I think it would be 8.4. 8.4.
4.8 to 8.4.
Right.
Okay.
So as you know, the
Permanent?
No, it's temporary. The corporate income tax, as you know, is been a lesser and lesser percentage of collections that we have in Illinois. We also are planning on passing a cigarette tax. Cigarette tax would be very critical to this equation because that would provide more money for education. That money would go into an education fund that would be used for growth in money for education.
Is that a buck straight up for a dollar? Or
$1 a pack.
So and how will that
It's
be
the second
distributed?
phase of the phase-in of 50 cent last year and 50 cent this year. So that's what we proposed last year. So now that would be implemented at $1 a pack.
The personal tax would be 5 1/4 for 4 years?
That's correct.
And it would roll back to 3.375 after 4 years?
Well, there would be 0.75 that would still go beyond the 4 years because You have to have 0.25% for the property tax and 0.5% to continue to pay the borrowing to pay the bills on time.
So after 4 years,
How
it's
much-
3.75. After 4 years, the permanent would be 3.75
I think that sounds right.
as opposed to 3.5.
You said something about just under 2%, and you gave that 1/8, so I'm just wondering, are we at 1 7/8 there for?
No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's 1.5 that is for the structural deficit, and that amount would be temporary and would end at the end of 4 years. Now, this is an outline. There's still, the governor's still meeting with caucuses right now, and there could be some tweaks to this, but this is the basic outline, and I
How
don't.
much would you borrow
Borrow.
for the bills?
The borrowing's about a little over $8 billion, eight and a half billion, I think.
And that's for pension, or that's just for bills, that's not including, or what's the
Not
pension borrowing
pension, no, it's not
plan?
pensions, not pensions. The pension for this fiscal year has to be borrowed. That would be included in this plan and paid back over an 8-year period.
The 3.7 billion.
That's correct. And then we have a category of bills, vendors that we owe money to, state group health insurance and corporate income tax refunds, the total's about 8.5 billion. Those will be paid immediately. People will get paid money that's been owed to them. It'll help the economy when we infuse that amount of money back into the economy when we pay those bills off.
And
So the
your
borrowing is-
understanding that the governor and Speaker Madigan are on board with this? This is an agreement amongst everybody?
Yes, it is, yes, and we presented it to our caucus, and we didn't take a vote or anything, but we had a good positive reaction to
The
it.
Speaker,
Is it,
is
is the corporate rate, where's the
I
corporate
hope
rate
we
going
get
to?
Republicans. Corporate rate goes to 8.4.
Plus the
temporary.
personal, plus the replacement tax, right?
Well, we don't change,
Well, right, but then we're gonna be, that'll be an effective corporate income tax rate of over 10%
well,
if this
if
bill
that's the way
passes.
you want to phrase it, if you want to add that to it, yes, but it's a smaller and smaller percentage of the total every year.
Do local governments get their cut of this increase?
No, they don't get the increase, but they don't get any reduction from what they get now.
To clarify on the borrowing, it's 8 billion for the bills plus 3.7 billion for
I
the
think it's about
bond.
8.5
For
pay
the
the
bills.
bills.
And then 3.7 for the
3.7
bond.
is for the bonding for
Okay.
fiscal year 2011.
well, the Speaker has said it can't be an all-Democratic show. It has to be bipartisan. What's the status of that
Now,
now?
that would be the question for the House.
And
Do you-
how
do
do
you
we
think this
expect
will
this to
pass?
move?
I think it'll pass the Senate. It has to pass the House first, though.
Is it going to originate in the House?
Yes.
And when do you have any idea when there'll be a vote in the House?
Well, they're in Sunday, so I think perhaps as early as Sunday.
So what is the total amount of revenue this raises then?
I think it's 6.2 from the individual increase, and then the corporate is approximately $1 billion.
What's the cigarette tax?
377 million.
How is the education fund distributed?
There's no distribution, it's just a fund we can determine later on. There's no strings attached to it, but it's for education.
When would I get my homeowner's rebate check?
You get your credit this year for your fiscal year 10.
Credit.
Yeah, you'll get your credit for your tax year 10 when you fill out your income taxes for 10. But for 11, that'll be about a year from now.
How
That's
much-
when we would send out checks for property tax rebates. It's approximately $775 million in property tax relief
Additional or total?
total.
And what will
How
the
does that be
average
distributed?
property owner get in a rebate check?
Everybody would get the same amount. It'd be about $325. Check for
$325 for 4 years? Or for
Every
3
year,
years?
every year you get $325. There's 2.4 million taxpayers who have paid property taxes.
So